Hi guys, Olive here. Today I'm bringing you my review of Guns, Germs, and Steel, The Fates of Human Societies by Jared Diamond. This book was originally published in 1997. I have the trade paperback version that was published in 1999. My version has 480 pages, which includes a further readings and index section. This book was the 1998 winner of the Pulitzer Prize for nonfiction. So you can probably guess that this is a piece of nonfiction that combines political, economic, sociological, anthropological, scientific, and linguistic elements to answer the basic but loaded question, why did societies develop as they did? What are the roots of the political, cultural, and technological divides between societies today? In this review, I'm going to give a sweeping overview of Jared Diamond's main arguments, but this book goes into an incredible amount of detail, a very interesting amount of detail, might I add. So if you are finding yourself craving more of the details behind these arguments, I encourage you to read the book. So in response to the main question that this book asks about the roots behind the divides between societies today, Diamond essentially says that it boils down to early advantages in location and resources. First and foremost, the peoples who had an early advantage, developmentally speaking, were those with access to a vast array of options when it came to domesticable plant and animal species. One of the things I found most interesting about this book was chapter 9, when it came to the criteria that is necessary for an animal to be domesticated. Not every animal is a good candidate for domestication. There are several different qualities that an animal must possess in order to even be considered a candidate for domestication, as chapter 9 covers. If you've ever wondered why you can ride a horse and not a zebra, you definitely want to read that chapter. Spoiler alert, it's mainly because they're assholes. Having an abundance of domesticable plant and animal species made it possible for food surpluses that were necessary for early population growth. Also, animal domestication led to early human diseases. A lot of early human diseases did come originally from animals, so it makes sense that societies that were domesticating more animals were being afflicted with more of these diseases. It may seem counterintuitive that these human populations needed to grow alongside of these developing diseases in order to have a developmental advantage, but actually the people who were not wiped out by these diseases passed on whatever immunity they had to the next generation, and thus the society as a whole was more immune. This is an important factor in another question that is posed by this book that I will cover in a few minutes. Something that was absolutely fascinating about this book was that Diamond talked about how a society's geographic location on the east-west axis was also highly important in that society's development. If you think about it, plant and animal species are evolved specifically for their location and their climate. Thus, if a population wants to spread out over an area and wants to take their domesticated plant and animal species with them, they need to go to an area where those plant and animal species will thrive. What Jared Diamond means by a society's advantage by being on the east-west axis means that a society will have a greater chance of survival if it spreads out eastward or westward versus northbound or southbound, because it is much more likely that the climate in the location that the population decides to settle in will be similar if they are going eastward or westward. So you can see how the Eurasian continent had a large advantage here. Not only is it a huge landmass, but populations were easily able to spread across the continent. This spread of human populations across the continent and the ease with which they can get in contact with one another is extremely important for advancements in technology. Technological advances were much easier for those populations who had contact with other populations because they were able to learn from them. No one population in of itself would ever be able to invent everything under the sun. And this is indeed not what happened. One society would come up with something and the knowledge would be transferred to another society and vice versa. There is some evidence that suggests that the written word was invented by a few societies and then spread out by other societies that saw them doing it. This is why populations on a big continent like Eurasia would have an advantage in that they get to see what other societies are doing versus island civilizations that live in relative isolation. So in this book, Jared Diamond several times poses the question, why was European civilization able to conquer or colonize other civilizations and not the other way around? And you may have already figured out that Eurasia had a lot of these specific criteria for development. It had a variety of domesticable animal species, then did say North America, where a lot of the large mammal species that may have been suitable for domestication were killed off by early hunter-gatherer groups. Eurasia had a number of domesticable plant species that allowed for the food surpluses necessary for population growth. Eurasia is a huge landmass that is ideally situated on the east-west axis, allowing for ease of population movement. And because humans were able to easily spread across the continent of Eurasia and were able to rather easily maintain contact with one another, technological developments were much, much easier. So in short, the Eurasian continent as a whole had advantages that other continents did not. This is why, for example, the Spanish conquistadors were able to conquer other civilizations. They were more technologically advanced and had guns that the indigenous populations did not. They also had immunity to diseases that the indigenous populations had not yet developed. There were certainly notions hundreds of years ago, and unfortunately it seems that some of those notions have persisted, racist notions that say that Europeans are in some way mentally or physically superior, and that's why we see the technological gaps we do today. The research behind this book clearly shows that it was a dice roll that the Europeans ended up on top. For me, Europeans saying that they're on top because of some sort of natural superiority is the same argument as some random billionaire saying that his place in the world is because of his innate talent and hard work, when more often it's because of a trust fund and nepotistic connections. The advantages that the Eurasian continent possessed allowed the populations living there to progress at a more rapid rate than others, not because they were in any way superior. Had the other continents had these advantages, we may be living in a very different world today. I found this book to be incredibly fascinating, very enlightening. It's one of those books where all of these individual pieces to this puzzle were staring me in the face, but I was never able to put the connections together before. So I am very grateful to the reading of this book for putting those pieces together for me. I would highly recommend this book, although I will say it is probably not for the nonfiction neophyte. The book goes into an incredible amount of detail, which I think for some people would be very welcome, but I think for other people may be a touch overwhelming. Certainly, though, the arguments that he makes and the details that he provides are very, very eye-opening. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, would highly recommend. I also know that there is a documentary based off of this book that I am planning on watching here in the near future. So if you've read this book, or even if you've just watched the documentary and you have thoughts or questions, please feel free to leave it down in the comments section below. I'm also reachable on a variety of places in social media. All links are in the description box below. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great day.